Thank you. The Ministers of Justice, Crime Prevention and Security Cluster have received an appraisal from the net joints about the security situation in the country since elections that were held on the 29th May 2024. We are satisfied with how law enforcement agencies prevented and responded to incidents that would have otherwise tarnished the 7th general elections in the country. The net joints have further briefed the ministers of the security cluster on their preparedness to assure the safety and security of the country in the post-election phase. Accordingly, as the Independent Electoral Commission have indicated that it is ready to declare the election results this evening, 2nd June 2024. The net joints have confirmed to the security cluster ministers of their readiness to ensure continued peaceful environment post the election results declaration. Would like to assure the country that the Constitution provides the mandate to manage the election to the IEC. Therefore, the decision to declare the results rests solely with the IEC in accordance with the law. In addition, the law provides for mechanism to raise disputes with the electoral processes, and it is only those prescribed processes that must be followed. As such, there cannot be any room for threats of instability in order to register objections or concerns about the electoral processes. As the security cluster would like to assure South Africans that the law enforcement agencies stand ready to maintain peace and stability as they have done throughout the elections period. Any attempts to undermine the authority of the state and South Africa's constitutional order will not be tolerated and will be dealt with accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. May we have an indications of hands for questions? Can I take hands? I see only one hand. 2, 3, 4. The rule is you introduce yourself, the media house that you come from, and then you ask a question. I'll start with you, and then followed by you, and the two ladies will then follow.
Good morning, Minister in General. Good afternoon. Alex Mitchell from News 24. Just my first question is, what does the cluster make of the comments made by former President Jacob Zuma talking about possible trouble if the elections are called? I just want to know how the cluster interprets those messages. Is that possible incitement? And perhaps just on the briefing, has the cluster received any intelligence and information about possible unrest in the wake of the election? Thank you.
Go ahead.
In terms of from eyewitnesses, I think my colleague has covered most of it, but I just want to know, I know that a big issue is the NK, and I know that you said that the cluster is ready to act to ensure stability, but I just wonder if has the cluster engaged with the NK leadership just to maybe tone down the rhetoric, or maybe I don't know, from a political level, but also can just be from an engagement level before something happens. Has the cluster considered just talking to the NK to tone down the rhetoric?
Yes.
Minister Katal, supporter from Kaya News. Minister, before the election started, you did say that there were hotspots that you were watching. We did see some of these small flare-ups in the Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal that you have also noted. Are those areas calm now, and in certain hotspots that you've been monitoring, is there stability there?
Clemington from ENCA, just to follow up on Katako's question, is there a number in terms of the total number of reported incidences over the voting day especially, but maybe even the 2 special voting days, and also in the country as a whole, and also the number of incidents per province? And then my second question is, can we get clarity on the 2 men that were alleged to have been picked up by police and related to their involvement in the IT system glitches that happened on Thursday or Friday? Because that was brought up in the MK party briefing yesterday, last night.
Thank you. Have I missed any hands? Or should we take that round? Okay, ministers, who's dealing with the first question around the comments by former president? We'll need to move them. They'll need to swap seats. We'll need to swap seats.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
The question was, have we engaged with the MK? No, we have not directly engaged with the MK party. We have, before the elections, called for calm. We have also asked people not to do that which is not legal in this country. We had also indicated that we would not tolerate anybody breaching or tarnishing the name of South Africa thus far, because in the past elections we have always behaved according to our constitution. So we did not go out of our way to speak to MK party. We are appealing to all parties, to all individuals in South Africa. We all have the same rights under the constitution of this country, not only to exercise that constitution, but to respect everybody else's right to exercise their own. So we are hoping that our plea to all parties involved will be heard by everybody involved. Those who have seen and those who have not seen will equally be affected by the same. So we do not think that we want to have a conversation across or with one individual party. We are appealing to South Africans to respect the laws of South Africa.
There were questions about flare-ups. There were questions about flare-ups that happened, especially in KZN, that would be Potchefstroom, and in Durban, a day before election. And the well-known one was Umtata one. The Potchefstroom one, police dealt with decisively so, because they tried to have the talks, and the issue was with the taxi industry. Many people thought it was the trucks because there was that in the air that the trucking industry were going to block. Yes, indeed, there was very long on the N2 towards Oripi Plaza trucks. That's why they thought it was the tax and then tax industry, and that was discussed. When it did not happen that they move, the police acted to move that, and it took quite a short time to do it. And the next day it was eThekwini Spaghetti Junction, and that one also it was dealt according by the police, and there were talks, and the next talks on that issue is on the 11th of this month. So everybody accepted that there will be those talks until that day. So we expect nobody to move and to do anything on that. Umtata one had a little bit some complication because the taxi industry had some issues, and then they went to hospital armed, and the law is very strict that you can't go to hospital, you can't go to school armed. Then police were supposed to confiscate their guns. Once the police confiscate your gun, they must go and check it if it was not used and all. Then there was that issue that they want their guns back. when they were still taken through the processes, ballistic and all that. And they then went to do what they did. But again, the police, by the time the day ends, that thing has been dealt with by the police. But the other thing, they showed the agility of the South African National Defence Force, because it was invited there, and then it happened that they were part of resolving the matter. The other issue there was the issue of students at Walter Sisulu, but also the leadership of the government in that province, together with the leadership of the university. They dealt with met to solve that thing. So there were two people there that were audio and video, who were openly calling for the war, not people to go to school, to close the roads and all that. And those two people are arrested. I'm told that they got bail either Friday and all that. So the situation is very calm, and is under control with those flare-ups. We're not waiting for any other flare-ups, especially on those areas where we have dealt with. I'm sure you asked also asked about the statistics of the statistics of the during the election. I think the National Commissioner could work on those statistics as respond to that. But it's also the question of the two people that were picked up, and I think she's better placed to answer that question.
Can we have the National Commissioner dealing with the number of incidents during the hotspots and the breakdown per provinces, and also the people who picked up will deal with the other question?
Thanks very much, ministers and media. We registered 130 cases over the 3 days. The first day on special vote, we registered 26 cases and we arrested 24 people. The second day, we registered 17 cases, we arrested 9 people. The third day, we registered 87 and we arrested 57. So in total, 130 cases, 90 people arrested, of which majority did get bail. 22 are still inside as we speak, and that is all about the matters of cases during the 3 day of the election. Information from our side as law enforcement agency, there is nobody picked up for anything whatsoever or ever. The 2 people, where there is a coincidence of a number of 2 people, is the one the minister spoke about. 2 people arrested at Mthatha, which he explained what they were arrested for. So any other 2 people we don't know of, we don't know where it come from. From law enforcement agency, we don't have such a number of people picked up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, National Commissioner. On what is our interpretation on the comments? Our view is on the statement that we have done to say anybody who threatens the security or the stability of the country, anybody who wants to undermine the constitutional order of the country, irrespective of who they are or who they were, the law enforcement will have to deal with them. And that's where we end. We don't have to comment or give a running commentary on the comments and the views or interpretation of what one person says or what the other says. The bottom line is that there is a law, and the law provides for dispute raising mechanism, including objections, and they are governed by the electoral law. If that is undermined, the law enforcement agencies will have to come into force. So we don't have to give running commentary on people's comments. We don't have to give an interpretation on people's views and comments. We'll have to apply the law, and that's what we are here for. And thank you very much. If there are no other questions, we can then thank, I see there are more hands that are following up. Okay, I'll start with her.
Thank you, Minister. Veronica Makwadi from Newsroom Africa. I hear your stance in regards to that any sort of incitement will not be tolerated, but if you haven't spoken to members of the party and you speak of the fact that nothing will be tolerated, how then do we get this message clear? It also just sounds like, a vague comment in regards to the utterances that were made late last night.
The second hand? No, let me start with her. It's her first time asking a question.
Patricia Pasaki from the SABC. If we take history into consideration, the July unrest, and we are now teetering perhaps on the same type of messaging that is now being echoed in society, what guarantee are we given that, there will be no chaos in the country in the next couple of hours? In particular, if we look into consideration that we are a few hours away from hearing the election results, the threats are already made.
There's the hunt.
Just to follow up on the July unrest, what lessons have been learned from the July unrest in terms of how you proceed with this, given the threats that have been made? And secondly, Minister, you do say that, as Veronica said, you're taking this all seriously and law enforcement must then apply. You won't entertain the comments. Will the law enforcement officials be taking this forward? Does someone need to, lay a charge or do something? Will law enforcement do something about the threats that have been made?
Maybe let me clarify before I invite my colleagues. On the issues of incitement and engagement, all political parties, remember, until now we're still bound by the Code of Conduct of Elections. All political parties signed a Code of Conduct. That Code of Conduct prescribes how the political parties must conduct themselves. And therefore, I do not know why would you want a special engagement with anyone else when all parties have signed the Code of Conduct. So the violation of the Code of Conduct will then be enforced, because that's what all political parties agreed to before we enter this phase of the elections. And you talk about the July unrest and why you need an assurance. There was a threat of a shutdown, is it March or February 2020? March 2023, and there was no shutdown. But also there was a threat that the elections will not take place, and the elections took place peacefully. Yes, there were incidences of flare-ups. In fact, on the day of the elections, the 29th, the main day, there was no flare-ups there were not flare-ups to talk about. Major flare-ups took place before the elections, before the actual day. So if you don't trust, if those efforts and that delivery by law enforcement agencies have not assured you of the capability of the law enforcement to deliver the safety of South Africans, I do not know what more you want us to do. But the law enforcement agencies led by Net Joints have proven to this country that they have the capacity, they can respond and they can address the matters. We have not said there will not be flare-ups, but we have said when those flare-ups, when we did the pre-election briefing, when those flare-ups take place, they will be dealt with. And I'll leave the other issues and the comments to my colleagues, the ministers, in particular the ministers of police and the ministers of defense. And in terms of whether somebody will follow up, that's why law enforcement is there, to make sure that all incidences that violate the law are followed up. Minister of Police.
July 2021. Now we have learned our lessons. Some other lessons we have learned is that people, though his reaction that call for those, they get arrested. That's why 63 of them, they are caught going. I don't know why that information is not out there. One of them has been sentenced to 12 years, which tells you that even judges and magistrates are serious on the matter. As I've said, that 63 of them are caught going. So others who try that, they will know that there is such a thing. But also, you remember that the president also appointed a commission of Professor Africa. So there were things that were raised there. One of the things that were raised was a strengthening of other units of the police, like POP, public order policing. That has been done. The other thing that they raised was the strengthening of crime intelligence. The thing has been done. It's got the permanent head. It's putting people in place and all that. Maybe that's why many prevented things never reach the purview of public and the media not knowing because of the improvement of those structures that were supposed to be put in place. And yourself, if you look around, there are many operations that are done by the police before they happen. The shooting of the criminals in their base and all that kind of thing. That is intelligence work. It's not because the Holy Ghost has come there and they put the light. No, it's because people are doing their work. We'll continue to do that. Well, Minister from Presidency did raise the issue of the shutdown that was supposed to. You were there. There was no shutdown there. And again, that was not the change of a good heart and all. It was because of the work that was put by the law enforcement agencies, as we have learned our things. But what we are not going to do is to be created for a wild goose as a law enforcement and chase that wild goose. People, they make statements. If those statements are not kind of criminal element on them, and until somebody open the case of them, we're not going to be chasing wild goose. There are people that have made statements, even from that organization you're talking about, before the elections, and those people the law dealt with. They are caught going because they were calling direct kind of blood situation and all that kind of thing. And if somebody opens the case on other thing and say the police must investigate, they will investigate. But I just imagine when the police every day somebody makes the statement and specifically look at that, we look across the board. You break the law, you don't have to have a label, you don't have to have a name that you are so whether we are that part on that part. What we need to do is to look at it. And the statement he just said, it doesn't matter who you are. When you get out of the way, when you break the law, that you understand that there is law in the country, will deal with you as the law agencies, law enforcement agencies will deal with you accordingly. And the law will have no eyes to see who you are, what is your label. It will be there to deal with you, and it should be decisive and accordingly.
Minister of Defense, you have no comment?
No,
We'll take the
maybe
last one.
just to say that in July 2021, there were some issues. We arrived a little bit late as defense. I can assure you that that was a good lesson. We are not late these days. We get there on time when we are needed. We are prepared. We don't have to have help from somewhere else to get to where we go. We have said that we will not tolerate anybody interfering with the rights of the rest of the citizens. We mean just that. We will not tolerate that. The integrity of South Africa is part of our responsibilities to safeguard. We take ourselves very seriously on that matter. You also said that we have, do we have to comment on the remarks? No, we don't. South Africans have the right to make comments. Freedom of speech is something we fought very hard for. But that freedom of speech has limits. When it starts putting lives, property at risk, then we begin to get very interested. But if it is just speech, as my colleague says, it is just speech, we're not going to raise uncles. But once it gets to where people are endangered, where the integrity of the state is endangered, then it becomes our business. We hope we will not go there.
I'm going to take the last hands, and then so that we close, I see only you as a follow-up. Okay, and
It's just a clarity question, it's not a question.
okay, let's start with the clarity, and then we'll come to you.
Just in terms of the 150 cases over the 3 days, is it possible to have a bit of a breakdown of like where the areas were or which provinces that these were? Is it possible?
Okay, there's the follow-up question, the other question.
Yeah, sorry about my excuse. It might sound a bit repetitive, my question, but I just want to know, does the next joint feel there's no need to engage with the MK leadership?
Maybe let me clarify that part. The net joints and the security cluster, our responsibility is to ensure law and order in the country. That is the first part. The MK party, whatever their briefing was saying, they were raising process in terms of that are governed and regulated by the Electoral Act of South Africa. So there is no point of net joints or the security cluster ministers engaging with MK party. The MK party must then follow the provisions of the Electoral Act so that they can raise their disputes in line with what the Act provides for. If there's any engagement, that's the engagement between the MK party and the IEC in terms of the processes set out by the IEC. And we're saying all political parties have signed the Code of Conduct, which prescribes how we must conduct ourselves as political parties, how we must conduct ourselves in terms of speech. It also says how we must raise our grievances, that Code of Conduct. And that is what must be applied. And I think that closes the matter. Because if you engage with party X, you will also have to go and engage with party Y. Because you may find that there are party Y, as indicated by the IEC, there were parties that raised objections. There were 6 parties that have raised objections, and if you go to the Western Cape, there was also a number of parties that raised objections. Is the net joints or the security cluster going to engage with those parties as well? No. We have to treat everybody in accordance with the provisions of the law. There's nobody above the law, and there's no peacetime hero. We must be clear about that part. And that's the end of it. So we're saying uphold the Code of Conduct, follow the Electoral Act dispute raising mechanisms, and that will be all. But if you threaten, or if anybody attempts to threaten the stability of the Republic and incite violence, the law will have to take its course and will respond to any incidents. And those are the incidences. And I think in terms of detail, if everybody requires the detail, I think the net joints will then give the direct details in terms of the breakdown, unless, Commissioner, you are ready to give the granularity of detail in terms of breakdown per province. Are you ready? And then we'll get the Minister of Police to speak before we conclude.
Well, Minister, you have said it in a very explicit and straight way, but I can add that policing is prescribed by the Constitution in the Republic of South Africa, and it does instruct what to do. Section 203 says our job is to protect, to combat, to investigate, to uphold the law and enforce it. There is no sign that's written and negotiate any criminality in any statement. Our job is to enforce the law if you get out of the way. And we're not about to deviate from doing so. That's what we're saying here, that anybody has a right in South Africa. The Constitution says so. South Africans have a right to march, to protest, even that is prescribed, not armed, not calling the war, not making head and threat against human beings and property. If you deviate from that, we are there to uphold the law and enforce it. That is the job of this cluster and the operators under the net joints. We hope, as the Minister of Defense has said, we don't reach there. But if we reach there, we have a job prescribed by the Constitution and is legislated what we must do, and that shall be done.
May we have the National Commissioner responding to the additional detail, and then I'll give to the Minister of Home Affairs to just say a word before we close. You don't want to speak?
Look, we don't have the granular details, but we can provide hereafter. Most of the cases were in your Eastern Cape, KwaZulu-Natal, and Mpumalanga. and most cases are Electoral Act related. Of course, with one matter we know in Wartburg in KZN there was one matter which happened not to be related to the election. But basically those are the cases, but we will provide you with the granular details later. Thank you.
Yeah, Minister B, when we were preparing for this meeting, my officials asked me what they must put for Home Affairs on the statement. I said nothing, because as Home Affairs, we did our job for elections to happen. The elections would not have happened without Home Affairs. The voters' roll was there because of Home Affairs on our national population register. Everybody who voted, let me say all the 27 million people who registered, got a document of identification from Home Affairs. So we have done our job, and if we are called upon to do it, we'll do it again. But for this press conference, Home Affairs have got nothing to say. Thank you.